I've been talking about the Raiders a lot, and much to the chagrin of Raider fans, because I've been talking about you're going to draft Fernando Mendoza. Just don't recreate what happened with the Colts with Andrew Luck, where they didn't have a good offensive line for a while. And then by the time they did, he was ready to retire. But Mike Silver has an article. He is a senior national writer for The Athletic, and this has to do with Maxx Crosby and Max's future. Max was not happy when he was, I don't think he was a healthy scratch, but he did want to play in those last two games. The Raiders wanted to make sure that they were tanking. They wanted to make sure they got Fernando Mendoza. Well, mission accomplished, but what's the future of Maxx Crosby? Michael Silver back on the program. Mike, good to talk to you again. If you were going to sum up the state of the Raiders, how would you do that in a couple of sentences?
I'll do it even quicker. They're a mess. And Dan, that's usually the case when a team goes 4-13 and 3-14 and fires coaches after each season. But yeah, in this case, they don't have a lot of valuable trade assets. They're obviously in need of a rebuild. And so just on paper, taking the emotion out of it, it does make sense to think about trading Maxx Crosby. They're asking for a Micah Parsons-like haul. I think that's probably a little ambitious, but there are many teams trying to get Maxx Crosby, and he's getting older. He would be going on his sixth head coach, if you count Rich Bisaccia, who had a long interim stint. And, he definitely wants out of there. So, in some ways, this is a simple equation. He wants to go. They need assets, and to get younger. We'll see if they pull the trigger soon or if this drags on a little bit.
Okay, give me the teams at the front of the line for Max.
I'm not exactly sure which teams. My colleague Diana Rossini has been all over this, and I'm sure she will be at the forefront, in the coming days. I know that it makes sense for Maxx Crosby that he wants to go to a team that has a chance to contend, something that has not been the case during his Raiders tenure. They did sneak into the playoffs during that interim Bisaccia year. Other than that, it's been rough. But, I look at teams like, say, the Patriots, the Ravens. There's been a lot of talk about the Bears. I think the Cowboys, who have signaled a willingness to be aggressive, coming off of the Parsons trade and then going out and getting Quinn Williams, would be a team that I'd look at. But, it's not like he has veto power.
Yeah.
He could threaten to retire if it was another situation that he thought was pretty desperate. I thought the Raiders might be working with him and his agent a little, more blatantly here and trying to find a spot. Their attitude seems to be, hey, we're just going to take the best deal. So we'll see how it plays out.
And the Raiders are set on Mendoza, correct? No matter
yes
what they're offered?
I think if the Jets wanted to do something insane, right, and give up tons and tons of capital, they would listen for sure, and the Jets are sitting at 2, so that probably makes the most sense. So I would say Mendoza, no matter what, assuming they are set on drafting somebody, you could make a case if they're offered something massive, they would listen. But yeah, I would strongly expect Mendoza to be the guy, and they have a chance to try to do what they should have done last year and be honest about their situation. Build it back up and try to do it a more organic way. Last year was trying to split the difference, and we saw how that worked out.
How did the Raiders get here?
It starts at the top, Dan, and I obviously covered Al Davis really closely, got banned from the facility and from the locker room on several occasions. It was not milk and honey. But I always had so much respect for Al Davis, being one of the icons of football, and obviously had a lot of football knowledge. There were organizational issues that kept them from being able to recapture that past glory, and really since since that 2002 run to the Super Bowl, they've only been to the playoffs twice and have not won a playoff game. So, that whole Raider commitment to excellence thing, that is a relic. And a lot of young people have no idea what those slogans would possibly stand for. Mark Davis was not a football icon. He was, like many next generation owners, just kind of, born into it. He's tried to find his way. So I do think it starts at the top. The column I wrote in The Athletic explores some of the other dysfunction in that building. And now you have Mark Davis doing something which on paper I think most people would agree is an exciting thing. He's turning to Tom Brady, one of the most ruthless competitors and greatest winners I've ever seen in any sport, and saying, Tom, you're a minority owner. Give me the blueprint. But Brady's not there. He's working for Fox. He's living in Florida, as is his prerogative. He's got Alex Guerrero, who's someone he's close to, in the building as the wellness coordinator, but sounds like Alex Guerrero, from talking to players and coaches and other people in that building, is presenting himself as someone far more powerful. He's certainly perceived as a guy who will go running to Brady with anything he sees or hears, and that does not seem to be a great environment, and it's part of the equation when it comes to Maxx Crosby's desire to get out of there.
But Tom Brady is running the Raiders?
I mean, Mark Davis said it. That's kind of what we all believed last year. And then when they fired Pete Carroll, Mark Davis issued a statement and said General Manager John Spytek will lead this search and all football operations with Tom Brady. So, you've got a first-time general manager in Spytek who's working hard, trying to do a tough job. But it's, Mark Davis came out and said Tom Brady's doing it too. So again, on paper, that's exciting. Tom Brady, I've seen him defy odds and galvanize people around him in a way that is mind-boggling. And, I think it's just hard in the NFL for us, watching this from the outside to think, someone could do that from afar. And I can't tell Tom Brady how to live his life. He's getting paid a lot of money to be a broadcaster. He's a father. He's, got a residence across the country. But, I think what's hard for people in that building is when somebody is going around kind of acting like, hey, I'm the pipeline to Tom, but doesn't have those credentials on the football side. That's kind of a recipe for confusion.
He's Michael Silver, senior national writer for The Athletic. Before I let you go, I was always wondering about this. It felt like Brady was a mentor to Shedeur Sanders, that Dion had asked Tom to kind of help Shedeur. And then Tom's in a position to draft Shedeur Sanders on a team that needed a quarterback or maybe develop a quarterback. And they didn't. They passed over Shedeur, every single round there. It just seemed strange that Tom knew Shedeur. He's in a position to draft Shedeur and didn't pull the trigger on that. Why?
Well, that goes back to is Tom all in or is Tom not all in? If I recall, Tom's comment after Shedeur didn't get drafted was kind of like, yo, I'm not in charge of that. And so, again, and that may be true and well-meaning, right? Tom at the time might have been like, hey, look, I'm not going to come in and try to be the overlord of this organization. I'm going to let John Spytek and Pete Carroll and my football people do what they think is best. Now it seems to be more blatant. Mark Davis is coming out and saying it, so you kind of have to own it. But, I think, Dan, that goes back to everything that we're talking about. Is Tom Brady actually all in? Is he running it? What message are people inside the building getting about the power structure and the vision and how it's playing out? So it's probably a positive development that Mark Davis tried to spell it out, and that, and that they have a coach who they, in theory, can try to build something with. And I love Pete Carroll. He's literally one of the greatest coaches of his generation. I think he's a Hall of Famer. So I don't want to in any way say that hiring Pete Carroll, was a negative, but it kind of flew in the face of what their situation was, given his age and his desire to win immediately, and it obviously didn't work.
Good stuff as always, Mike. Good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dan.
That's Michael Silver, senior national writer for The Athletic.